so just a couple of introductions because people are standing, some of the people that are going to be helping us in the class. I mentioned that my name is Susan Verscheure, and I'll tell you more about me in a moment. But a couple of our GTFs are here, and Debbie in particular is a GTF that's going to work specifically with lecture as well as with lab. And so, Debbie, you want to do the van wave for us? Yeah. That's Debbie. And then Tynan is also standing over there, and she's another GTF for the lab specifically. And Betty is over there, and she's also going to be one of our lab GTFs. And then at least two of our TAs are here. You guys want to wave and say hello? Yeah. And we have about 8 TAs actually that are working with anatomy to help all of you in the lecture specifically. In the lab, we have like 31 TAs. So it's really an incredibly rich program that we have here of students helping students and coming back year after year. So I think you'll enjoy that. So thank you. And they were so kind as to give up their seats when it was getting tight here. All right, so our topic this term is going to be anatomy of the musculoskeletal system. All right, and so I will talk a little bit. Today my goal is to do probably too much, but it's to introduce you to what the goals of the course are going to be. And once we do a little bit of what the course will look like, then I want us to stand back and take a big picture look. We're actually going to watch a video from the TED Talks conference with a gentleman who talks about education and creativity. And so kind of stand back for a second and take a big look and say, why are we doing this? Why are we here? How can we best learn and be engaged with the material? And then afterwards, we'll talk a little bit about a system for us to communicate how we learn and teach differently. And we'll talk about that in light of something called true colors. Okay, so we have a lot of things to do, but we'll start off kind of giving you the premise of the class, and we'll move on from there. All right. So the goal of our class is to become familiar with the human anatomy, specifically of the extremities, arms and legs, the back, and the neck. That's the area we're going to focus on the most, whereas next term we'll focus more on the core and on the head, because we'll talk about the brain and we'll talk about internal organ systems, okay? So really it's more extremities, back, and neck. And what I care about most when you are gathering knowledge is you have some kind of a context for your knowledge. I was never really a fan of learning information, writing it down, and forgetting it because I had no context for it. So that will be one of the bigger parts of our course. I also would like to provide a forum for you to create your own personal resource guide, something that you can look to later. Many of you, as we'll discuss, have aspirations of going on in fields that are related to this topic, whether that be a healthcare-related field or a graduate school research-related field. But a lot of you, you're not just learning about the body for fun and then you're not going to use it anymore. And the nice thing about this resource guide that you're creating is you can hang on to it. And I actually love when people who have finished this program and moved on will email me and say, you know, I'm in my second year of med school and I'm still using the resource guide, what we call our external brain, that I created in this class. And that to me means that it was authentic and useful. So that's the goal, is for you to create that this term. All right, and then lastly, I want to have fun because I'm going to be here twice a week, and I'm hoping that you are interested in that as well. And so I want us to have fun, and we're going to learn about the body in this clinical context. Okay, so a place that we can apply it that isn't just memorizing information for the sake of the test, but for us to have some real context and application that we can use it for. So how are we going to do that? Let's get a little glimpse at what this might look like. Here's a clinical context for you. A 25-year-old soccer player presents with knee pain and weakness in their leg and ankle. They sustained a contusion on the inferior and lateral side of their ipsilateral knee, but have no recollection of trauma to their foot and ankle. Okay, so there's a clinical scenario that, yes, you will be able to completely tackle by the end of the class. So, in order to get started, if that's our goal, that you can take a scenario like that and you can apply your knowledge to work this out, what do you need? How do you get started? What kind of information is going to be important? I want you to talk to whoever's sitting around you, introduce yourself, say hi, and then talk about how would you even begin to tackle something like this. I'll show it to you again so you can look at it while you're talking about it. There's still a... Hi, there's another seat in the front if you're coming to join us. It's on the far side. You can see there's like 3 people in a row and there's 1 seat on the other side of them. The very, very front. Yeah. It's easier to see from the front. What's that? I know. Isn't that great? Okay, guys, let's come on back. Let's come on back. All right, so I'm curious to hear some of your conversations, but this is a good opportunity for me to introduce the TV set. On the TV set right here, we have, I believe, 6, but now I have to count. Maybe there's more now. Looks like I see 7 people sitting, so 7 students in Bend. Is that right, Sarah?
Yeah, right now, yeah.
Cool. Cool, and actually I'm going to turn them up just a touch so I can hear them a bit better. But I have to learn not to change the channel when I do that. So, sitting in Bend, I know you guys are jealous, right? How many people here are like, oh, they're in Bend and they can go skiing when I can't? Yeah, I'm jealous. I know. So we have some students in Bend that join us, and we've been doing that every year for the last 5 years. This is the 6th year, actually, the whole time I've been teaching anatomy here. And so I'm going to go back and forth between asking questions of students in Bend. Sometimes you can hear some of what they say, but sometimes you can't, the same way that if someone in the back talks, someone over here can't hear. So I'll do a lot of repeating what you've said so that everybody can hear, whether you're in Eugene or in Bend. Okay, but welcome, Bend students. I hope you guys are comfortable. I'm seeing waving, thank you. And I am hoping, we'll talk more afterwards, but if it's possible, guys from Bend, if you can not take off right away, right after class, it'd be great if we can just, if it's quiet enough in here, try to talk for a sec. If not, Sarah and I are trying to work out a time on Friday to make that work. Is that right, Sarah, still? Are we working on that? Okay, cool. All right, so let's start with you guys in Bend. What was something that when you saw this kind of scenario, what was one of the things you figured you're gonna need to get started? What's some kind of information you're gonna need? You got it, basic terminology, right? Did anyone come up with that? That there's some terminology in there that not so much, right? Okay, so yeah. So we need to learn a bit of a new language. And in a lot of ways, anatomy is a language, right? It's the same way that if I went into an art history class or if I went into some kind of history class, there's gonna be some terminology that I wouldn't be familiar with and I would have to grow with. So that's the first thing we need is to know we got a bunch of terms like ipsilateral and inferior lateral. They're just telling you directions onto the body. It's like driving directions on where you're going, but we need to learn that. What else do you need to know? Someone from anywhere, Eugene, Bend, just shout it out.
How do the knee and the ankle relate to each other?
Nice. How are the knee and the ankle related? Here we have a situation where we're talking about one and the other, so you need to understand what's the connection between those. Is it tissues that connect from one to the other? Is it muscles, ligaments, nerves, bone? Why would these two things be related in the same injury with pain and contusion? Great, what else do we need to know? Yeah.
Someone had this injury without any recollection of trauma.
Okay, so maybe like dig a little deeper on, yeah, like what could have happened here, you know, basically get a sense of how does the body work? How would it move? If it ended up getting hurt a certain way, you'll start to know what does it do naturally and what kind of movements would not be natural and therefore could cause injury. Okay, so you have to dig a little deeper on what could have happened. What other types of things? Yep.
What types of ligament that could have been torn and if you're able to play for the game? play the game.
Sure. So the first thing is the anatomy part is that if you can understand what is located there, so if you can say, oh, I know there's a ligament right here, and it's supposed to do this job, they could have injured that. So you need to know the first part, which is what's there. And then the second follow-up part, which I promise I won't ask you guys to decide, is whether or not this person can keep playing in the game. Now, if you continued in a certain career path, you would be in a point where you would need to make that decision, right? There's physicians that make those decisions. There's athletic trainers that make those decisions. But for you guys, I just want you to get to the point where you can explain to me what's happening with the body. Okay? All right, anything else? Any other piece of information? Sorry? A history of injuries? Sure. Sometimes that would really help, right? And obviously when we're in a big class environment like this and we're trying to communicate, I try to keep things simple to the point that, you know, we can't have a lot of guesswork about, well, they could have had this list of 10 injuries in their previous history, which means that now they've got this and this. So we'll keep things more simple and straightforward. But in the real world, we often do have to consider what else has gone on with this person and what are their predisposing injuries, that type of thing. Okay, you guys have got a good list. One more.
What movements are causing them pain currently?
Excellent. What movements are causing them pain? So first you have to know what movements the body does at each joint, and then you can actually ask them to go through those movements and tell you about their experience. That's something we're going to do a lot of, actually. I'll share with you some of the things that I came up with myself. The first one was definitely terminology, lateral, inferior, contusion, ipsilateral. We have some words to learn. Then the next one someone said as well, which is how are things located, oriented to one another, right? So how are they connected? What might cause weakness? So it says there's weakness. Well, what causes weakness? What is the opposite of weakness? We need to understand how our body works that way. So this one, injury to which type of tissue would cause weakness? We'll definitely work a lot on that. What further information is required, right? So what was the history, or what other information would you even need to know in order to understand their anatomy? Which movements are weak in particular, and the connection between symptoms and injury, right? They said they have this injury, but now they have these symptoms. Why do those connect? So that's just a big picture on. Our goal would be that at the end of the term, you guys can look at that scenario, and actually that's out of an exam question. So it's not at all far from the types of things we'll be doing. You'll just be armed with a lot more knowledge. All right, so in this class, the way it's gonna work is that you are going to gather knowledge ahead of time. All right, and that's something that I'll guide you when the which knowledge to gather, but you'll do the gathering. But then when we come back together, our goals will be to focus on applying that knowledge, right? So those of you who are taking the lab right now, which I know is most of you, a lot of the lab is gathering that important basic knowledge of anatomy, right? And actually getting a visual reference with it as well. Then when we come to class, we'll be trying to apply that. So we won't be repeating anything that's in lab. You've learned it. You come here, and now we're going to go on to the next step, okay? All right, so why would we teach anatomy this way? Because actually, and I have a chance to visit with other anatomy professors across the country, they don't all teach anatomy this way. So why am I going out in left field and wanting to teach anatomy in this way? Why don't you talk to your neighbors and see if you can figure out why this crazy woman at the front of the class thinks this is a good idea, all right? I'm still hot from my run. It's like I was done running at 9 o'clock. I know. It has to be Tuesday, Thursday. I know. It's just really funny. I always come like all rosy, and that's the way it goes. Yeah. You're very kind. Which one? 8 o'clock. Yeah, Tuesday, Thursday. Sometimes as the runs get longer, I have to start earlier. But okay. So I'd like to know if anyone else thinks there's any wisdom in this other than me. Ben, let's give you guys a chance to start first. What do you guys think? And Ben, do you think there's any wisdom in this? I don't know if they can hear me.
Yeah, how we're gonna really use it.
That's how you're going to really use the knowledge? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like why not start that way, since in the end that might be how it's most useful? Sure, cool. How about someone else? Yes?
So remember it when you apply it.
I think so. I think it helps you remember it when you apply it. I'm not really good at, okay, so that's a lie. I'm actually pretty good at short-term memorization, and I'm horrible at long-term memorization. Anything I memorized is gone. It just is. It was a very interesting undergraduate experience for me because I was really good at memorizing and for the test, but don't ask me the next day. I mean, how crazy that a mind can work that way. But if I had a reason, something I could hang my hat on, like a structure that it belonged to, so I can say, oh, I need this because, or I can apply it because, it would stay. So I think you might like that too, because gosh, it's a lot of time and energy to put into things that you're not going to keep with you for a while. I'd rather you kept some stuff. Other thoughts? Anything else? Yeah.
It's also really nice because not everyone's just an auditorial learner. It also appeals to visual learners and tactile learners.
Great. Great. The suggestion here is that this style might help those that aren't just kind of listening learners, just audio learners. People who are more tactile or visual might be able to learn better in this particular environment. I think that's great. Here's some of the things I thought of myself. I mentioned my desire to move beyond memorization. And I know whenever you learn something new, like some of the terminology and stuff in the beginning, you have to use some of your memorization skills to get there. But I think that what the important part is how things move from the memorized part of your mind, short-term memory, into that higher order learning part of your mind. So it's the application of terminology or parts of the body that you might start having to memorize and then move ideally beyond. So we want to work on some of those higher order problem-solving type skills to get you there. The other reason that I like the idea of you actively gathering your information is that passively listening is boring, I think, right? So if I go and just passively listen every single day, I get bored and I drift away, especially if I don't have a context, I don't have much knowledge to start with, and I tend to get lost as well on the details. So I'm hoping that you'll become more familiar because you're actively uncovering it in the way that makes sense to you, and then we can work together to progress your knowledge. All right, and then we'll use that class time to clarify rather than to start from the beginning. All right? I thought I should tell you a little bit about me as well. First, I'll tell you about the hats that I wear in our department. So my personal background is in athletic training and sports medicine. And my original undergraduate degree was a physical education degree, same typical kind of classes that we have in this department, so biomechanics, motor control, that type of thing. But I was specifically focused on being an athletic trainer and an athletic therapist because I'm from Canada and we use different terminology. Okay, so that was my background, and then I went on and did a master's here at the University of Oregon about 11 years ago, and I actually came into the program that I now run. So it just happened to work out that way, that I never went away. They just let me keep coming back day after day. So I have a lot of students here that are in a specialized program for to be a certified athletic trainer. They all have become certified beforehand, then they come here and they do an advanced degree with me. So if any of you watch football games and you see the healthcare providers at the sidelines, those are my graduate students. There's about 12 of them. All right, so that's my one hat that I wear is the sports medicine hat, and I help to run their graduate program. And then for those of you that don't know, athletic trainers are healthcare professionals that deal with prevention, assessment, rehab of injuries. And they sometimes work with elite athletes and sport teams, and other times they work with everyday people in the typical population. We can't all be special, right? All right, so those are pictures of my students. And then I have another life. Well, obviously, the other part of my professional life is to teach you and to teach anatomy. And because we have a cadaver lab and we have 8 GTFs and 8 TAs for lecture and 31 TAs in the lab, it's, as you can imagine, it's kind of a big program. So that's the other big hat that I wear is to work in anatomy. Okay, but my other life, because I think it's really important that we have another life. There are a lot of people that I know are in this class that are highly motivated, have huge career aspirations, they've been working really hard, and sometimes they don't hear a lot about having another life. And I think that it's really important as you move through those aspirations that you maintain yourself. And so this is the self that I've somehow managed to hang on to through my PhD and through all the hurdles of academia that I've been through. I really like to be out in the mountains and climbing. That's actually me sitting on top of Mount Thielsen in the Cascades. The top one is me and my 6-year-old sea kayaking in Alaska, which we did this summer. And that's me running that half marathon in Eugene with a girlfriend of mine who actually will come and talk in the winter term to this class. But anyway, so I really believe in maintaining that life, so you don't ever have to apologize if you tell me that you have life too. I'm fully expecting that you will. The other things that I like to do are just be with my family in the evenings. I know this is a crazy concept, but I actually try not to open a computer in the evening because I sort of work with a computer from somewhere about 5 in the morning until 6 at night, give or take. Because depending on when the exercise fits in there, somewhere in those hours for at least 8 or 10 of them. So when I get home, computers close and I focus on my absolutely adorable 6-year-old and my very good to be with husband. And so a lot of you will find that when you get home, that's when you get on your computers, but that won't be when I'm on my computer, okay? So, and I like to be upfront about that because I don't want you to send me an email and think you're gonna get a response and not get a response. So I will do email in the afternoons. That's when you can expect me to answer Monday through Friday. Because the other thing I do is I disappear every other weekend to the mountains where there's no internet. And literally every other weekend. So I will not be on a computer in the evenings or on the weekends. Okay? So just realize that you can expect a message back from me sometime in the afternoon, Monday through Friday. Okay? And I'll encourage you to find the niche is your life, even though you're working extremely hard at school. So let's hear a little bit. I have some ideas of who you might be, but I would like to hear more. So, future in healthcare. How many people right now have plans for a future in healthcare? Yeah, look around the room. So, this is my typical expectation, that it's somewhere in the 90% people have plans. So, that's another reason why I enjoy teaching the class with a clinical focus, because I know many people will resonate to that because they have clinical careers. All right, let's hear a couple of careers. So, I'll just shout up a couple and you put up your hand and tell me if that's true. How many people are interested in nursing? There's a bunch of nursing. How about medical school? How about PT school? How about athletic training? How about dentistry? All right, someone give me one now. Pharmacy, that's another good one. Yeah, pharmacy. Yeah, there's a bunch. There's a lot of people there, and a bunch of people in Bend. Yeah, any others? Prosthetics? Oh, cool. Very cool. PA school. Yeah, PA school. That's usually pretty popular too. Yeah, excellent. So that gives us an idea. Anyone want to shout out one more? Teaching. How many people are interested in teaching in their future? Yeah, it looks like it's you and me. Oh, there's 3 of us. Cool. Okay, good. So, and I recognize that some of you here have much more diverse goals than that. But as you can see, as a population, there's definitely some trends. All right. So you're very. This is kind of what we're used to seeing in anatomy across the last 6 years. All right. How many people are excited about taking anatomy? Well, that's pretty good. All right. I'm excited. I'm always excited. I always have the dream the night before anatomy that I didn't make it to class on time. Like every single year on the first day of class, I dream like something prevented me. I'm running, I can't get there. I don't know. It's hilarious. Anyways, how many people here just have a job? How many people work outside of their, I mean, I know schools work, but how many people get paid to do something outside? Okay, lots and lots of you. How many of you work more than 20 hours a week? Yeah, that's lots of people too. I'm always amazed at your ability to do that and balance everything. Okay, so I appreciate, and I'm asking you these questions because I want you to know that I know you have a lot of other things going on. Okay, now that doesn't mean I don't have really high expectations for you, because I do, and we'll find out more about those, but I don't want you to think that I'm like in the dark thinking that your entire life is taking this anatomy class, because I get it's not. All right, how many people have family responsibilities? Yeah, lots of people have family responsibilities nowadays, totally. How about what year you're in? So how many people here are a sophomore? And then junior? So mostly juniors. And then senior? Some, and then post-bac? Yeah, lots. I know post-bac, it's like, it's gonna be, it's the up and coming like new year. It's the, yeah, it is. It's okay, I think I was an undergrad for 5 or 6 years, I don't even know. I just kept going to school. Oh, and then I went for another 6 years of school. I am one of those people who just loved school. Okay, how many people are nervous about the workload expectations? Okay, that's probably good, actually, because I want you to really be cognizant of what they are. They don't tend to change or diminish over time. We've been doing this class for 6 years, and it's been the same workload expectations all this since. So you're probably not going to convince me that it should be less. So if you're a little bit nervous about it, I hope you're also looking at your schedule and thinking about, can you do this and be successful? Do you have enough time? And we'll talk exactly about the number of hours in a minute. How many people are ready for the challenge, though? What do you think? Okay. See, you guys are good. You're enthusiastic. I like that. I'm enthusiastic. I'm annoyingly optimistic and happy. I can't cut it out. There's nothing I can do to change it. Course learning objectives. What I'd like to do is this is going to help you, I hope, unravel a little bit more about what this is all about and how it's going to happen, and hoping to pull in so you can see how your knowledge and the skills that you're building are going to fit into different assignments across the term. So I'm hoping all of that will happen. And also I'll give you some examples of actual exam questions that will test knowledge in different areas, okay? My goal here is to give you the picture. I don't really want to surprise you too much along the way. All right, and this is literally like verbatim from the syllabus. So by all means, I'm going to ask you to read the syllabus from beginning to end later, but here's just the big picture. All right, so given this thing that I'm going to be talking about called the external brain chapters. Okay, now some people, it took them the whole term and they never figured out what the heck I meant by an external brain. So personally, a few years ago, I had a computer that couldn't hold all the information that it needed. And so what did I get for it? I got an external hard drive, right? Because the memory within that computer wasn't sufficient. So I got an external hard drive for my computer. And so I got to thinking, wouldn't it be nice if my brain didn't have to have all of the information they ever needed, right? And so I wanted to make an external hard drive for my brain. So I'm going to call that your external brain, okay? Like your external hard drive. And what that means is that the information you gather in there, some of it you'll become familiar with and you'll need to use without looking at it. But sometimes, in order to answer questions, you're going to need to look at it. You're going to need to use your external brain in order to answer clinical questions. And you'll literally get that opportunity. So your goal as you're creating, kind of like when I have my external hard drive, I can set up my files however I want, right? And if you and I both had an external hard drive, you looked at them, they'd look really different because mine would be organized this way and yours that way. So it's going to be the same for this external brain. So I'm going to give you the chapter outlines. And you go online today, and if you haven't yet, and look at what that means. But I'm going to give you an outline that says, here's the content that you're going to need to know, right? You're going to need to understand what are the different planes of the body? What are the different movements that a joint can go through? This kind of basic didactic information. I'm going to tell you what it is and say, now go find that information and organize it however you like. Okay, that's your external brain. I'll give you the guidelines, and then you can create it. You can use illustrations, charts, you can use stories, you can use anything you want. It should match your style, okay? That's what's important. And we'll try to help you uncover more about your style as we go. For example, like I mentioned, tables and charts, hand-drawn illustrations. Like some of you can do that, and it's amazing. I personally cannot do that. Okay, I would have a lot of stick diagrams, and it wouldn't be so fantastic. Others of you have amazing artistic skills, so use what you've got, right? Use your skills and talents. You can copy pictures from the web. You just have to label them. So you can't just take someone's picture that's already labeled and put it in there because that doesn't take a lot of thinking. I can cut and paste really easily without thought. But if you have to look at it and then label it, now you are engaged with it, and now it'll be helpful to you, okay? So you can do that. You can put in personal mnemonics, whatever you like. If you want more information about this, and many people do, after class today, Debbie and also Jill and Melanie at the back are going to come and help us out afterwards and share what did they do last year, what did their external brains look like. So for those of you that feel like this is really intangible, they'll be here both today and Thursday after class to show you theirs and kind of give you some insights that they gained. All right. So learning objective number 2. It is that you will be able to recall the name, location, and function of the anatomical structures that are in your external brain. Okay, so not everything is going to be something you'll reference. Some things you're going to become familiar enough with that you'll just know them because you'll be using them enough. Okay, so and that will probably be on closed book, right? Closed book exams that are multiple choice and short answer. Okay, so the focus of those kind of questions will be the name, location, and function of anatomical structures, and kind of the basics. All right, let's give you an example. This is an exam question, all right? Maybe not on this year's exam, but it's an exam question nonetheless. So which of the following joints can produce abduction and adduction? These are things I promise you will learn. And then here's a list of joints, and that none of the above, it shows up a lot. I'm all about using none of the above, so just to be aware, some people's previous instructors don't like that one. Anyway, so this is just like an exam question. You'd look through, take a look at the different answers, and make a choice, okay? So it's pretty basic, didactic. This is talking about what can they do. So it's their function. So name, location, function. That's the basic gist of that closed book exam experience, all right? So you will also, during closed book, here's some more detail. So in the closed book sections, again, multiple choice or short answer. I think we'll have a little bit of both. You're going to learn about the body movements and the planes that they occur in. Okay, so how does the shoulder move, and in which plane does it move in? We're going to talk about the geographical relationship between structures, meaning if you know where a certain bone in the face is, do you know where the other bone is in comparison to it? Is it superior to it? Is it inferior to it? Where is it located? So you're going to have to understand not just the anatomy in a bubble, but how does it relate to one another. All right? Mechanisms and terminology of bone growth. Okay, so just the basics of how do our bones end up the way they are. Classification of different structures. So we're going to talk about the type of joint, the type of bone, type of muscle. All of these things have a classification system. Okay, so you'll be familiar with those classification systems. When it comes to muscle attachment sites, we're going to focus mostly on the direction of the fibers. All our muscles have a fiber direction, and it matters because it affects their function. Muscles can only do one thing. They can shorten, and they can only shorten along the muscle fibers. So that's going to be a real focus for you in the lab to notice and look at the structures, whether you're looking at it at a cadaver or looking at it in a chart or a model. Be noticing that, and we'll talk a little bit about muscle attachment sites as it affects their action. You're not going to memorize every single muscle, origin, insertion. We're not going to do that, but certain ones that make sense and are grouped together, I'll ask you to be able to come up with those. We'll also talk a little bit about the peripheral circulatory system. So what arteries and veins do we find in the arms and the legs? So just a little bit of that. And then some basic anatomy with the cross-sectional spinal cord, meaning that when you take a spinal cord and you cut it in half, that you could actually name the parts. You have some idea of how this spinal cord works. Okay, that's the basic gist. More spinal cord information will come in the following term. All right, so those are details. The last one is mechanisms for injuries. So every structure, based on how it looks anatomically, will have a weakness, right? And so based on that weakness, it's more likely to be injured that way. And we'll talk about those. So it's a mechanism of injury based on anatomical structure. All right, and here's an example of that. So which of the following movements would occur in the sagittal plane? And then it lists a number of different movements at different joints. So there, that will give you your terminology that's specific to now planes of motion. And that's one of the first things we'll do. So in like a week, you'll know the answer to that. That's exciting, right? Okay. One of our last learning objectives, we used to have a couple of more. We talked about applying things to clinical scenarios. But here's the difference. When you apply something to a clinical scenario, you know what you get to use? Your external brain. So you no longer have to have it all inside this brain because the focus of this is on how you apply. Do you have the skills to read a clinical problem and dissect it and then come up with the answer, not because you did or didn't remember the little piece of anatomy, but because you understood the problem solving? Okay, so in that case, you can pull out your external brain and you can look up all the details as long as you put them in there. And as long as you know how to access them, you can use that knowledge, okay? So that's how we'll kind of differentiate each test. We'll have some parts of the test that are closed book, and you'll have another part of the test that's open book. And the open book is the only place that you'll see clinical scenarios. Make sense? Okay. Here's an example. I know the text is getting small, so I'll read this. So, an injured worker comes to you for assessment of their shoulder. Upon assessment, you notice that active abduction is weak and painful, passive horizontal adduction is painful, and resisted abduction is quite weak and very painful. So which of the following could be injured based on this information? Okay, and then it gives you a list of different structures. And you will have the skills to know what each of those structures are, where they're located, what their function is, and you'll have the skills to dissect that question and say, well, wait a minute, what is that movement and what muscle causes that movement? And what does it mean if something's weak or painful? This year, actually, we have an exciting new tool to help us with this. For the last year, I've been working with interactive media in the library, and they've helped me to create an online interactive tool for you to use that is all about how to take clinical information and apply it. And so you don't have to rely just on me being able to help you to understand that. It's at least an hour-long simulation that you walk through with clinicians and patients that go through this. So it's pretty exciting. It's like just about ready. There might still be some bugs in it. And again, we've been working on it for a year, so it's a big project, but I'm hoping that you'll get a big benefit from it, even if it has a couple of little bugs for us to jump hoops through, okay? All right. Now, I think this is your last learning object, and this is, again, a bit of an unusual part of this class. You will have the opportunity to talk to your peers about your test answers, and you will have the opportunity to then decide, is your answer correct or is their answer correct? And hopefully you'll be using some problem-solving skills, and you won't just say, oh yeah, they're right, because I'm not right, right? Ideally, you'll say, well, why would they think that? And you'll debate it out with them. And actually, I really enjoy this part of the exam because it's really loud in the classroom. So, this will be a unique part, but the goal is that you can judge, because you know what? All the rest of your career, you're going to have some piece of knowledge, and someone else is going to say, no, it's this, right? And then you got to decide, well, am I right or are they right? How do you figure that out, right? Every time you read a new website and you see some information, you have to decide, well, I thought it was this. Do I just believe them because they told me? So I really think that's an important skill for you to develop, and you'll have the opportunity to do lots of developing with that. Because, you know, when there's a test and grades on the line, people somehow get really motivated to figure out what is the truth. So, that's a fun part. So that's a bit unusual, but we'll call that the group exam, okay, that you'll have an opportunity to do.